If you have some lingering holiday quilts that you need to get finished, I have a really great free motion quilting idea for you guys today. It looks like a little string of twinkle lights. We are going to be both drawing and quilting this in this video today, so grab a pen and download the little draw along sheet that I have prepared for you guys, and let's get started drawing. Here's the basic overview of the design we're going to be doing today. It is based on a meander, which is simply a wiggly line that completely covers the surface of your quilt. You may also hear it called stippling or just a wiggly line. It's a very simple, beginner-friendly, all-over free motion quilting design that many people start with. And if you've never done it, it's a great one to have in your toolkit because so many other designs are based off of it. We've taken that meander and we have added these little twinkle lights, Christmas lights, tree lights, whatever you'd like to call them. If we zoom in, you can see that this design has two parts. It has the circle and it has a small little oval. That's like the little electrical attachment that connects the bulb to the wire. If you've ever done any pebbling, then this is going to feel really natural to you because it's going to be that same similar circle shape. If you haven't ever done pebbling, then this is going to be a great introduction to establishing that shape in your quilting. If we were looking at these shapes through that pebble lens, we would probably think that the way to achieve this is to go all the way around this oval, backtrack around, then go all the way around the circle, and then clip around this oval and then continue. So we would be stitching around this oval multiple times, but there's a much easier way to accomplish this design. And we're going to break it up into two shapes so that we are doing the oval and the circle at the same time. We're going to begin on our meander line. We're going to make a little sharp turn, and then we're going to go into that circle. It's a little bit like an S that you work from the bottom up, and it is half of the pebble and half of the oval underneath it. The other half of that shape is the mirror image. It's a 2 in a way. You start at the top, you complete that circle, and then you come around and you finish that little oval at the bottom. Now we're going to put those together and overlap these two parts. And when we do that, our circle is going to close and we're going to create that oval on the bottom, all in one fell swoop with very little overstitching. So while quilting it, it would look something like this. You meander along. When you come to where you want a light to be, you take a sharp turn, big circle, finish the oval, and then continue with your meander. Sharp turn, big circle, finish the oval. So now that we have the basic shape down, let's go ahead and quilt it. So here I am quilting out that same shape that we just finished drawing. I'm going to work my meandering line, just gentle curves, until I reach the point that I want my light to be. I'm going to make a sharp turn going back the way that I came with my meander. Then I'm going to go right into my large pebble and then come around, finish that little electrical socket oval. And when I finish that, I'm going in the direction that my meander naturally wants to go. So I can just continue that line and keep stitching until I get to where I want the next light to be. Now you can see that I am pausing here quite often to readjust my hands. I keep my hands nice and close to where the needle is, where I'm stitching, so that I have the most control over the movement of the fabric. Don't be afraid to pause and adjust your hands. A good place to pause is where your stitching is changing direction or overlapping anyway. Probably in this design, a good place to be stopping and adjust is not where I am here in the middle of a curve, which is a little trickier, but where my stitching is coming back around from making this large pebble to where it's stitching over itself on that small oval. That way, if there's any little blip or stitch that gets a little wobbly when you begin stitching again, it will be a little bit more hidden because there's already some thread buildup in that area. Now I'll speed it up a little bit so you can see how I fill this space as evenly as I can. While I'm stitching, I'm trying to peek at the stitching that I've already done so that I know if I need to bend my meandering lines up in there to fill a space, or just keep an eye on what direction I need to go. If you are a beginner or you feel like you need a little bit more guidance on where you should be heading with your stitching, there are some templates that you can buy that have a meander line that you trace onto your fabric, or use like a pounce pad to transfer, or you could take a chalk pencil or a water soluble marker depending on the color of your fabric and just draw a very loose meandering line. And then all you will need to worry about is adding the lights wherever you want them to go. Now, I think the circle lights are super adorable and charming, but there's also two other light shapes that I have drawn out at the bottom of the downloadable PDF for you guys. And there's also a variation with a little flame or element inside of those light shapes. The first one is actually the light shape that I started experimenting with this design on, and it took me a while to make it look not like a triangle because I was initially drawing it like a triangle, but it was looking like a tree. But the key to this is to think egg-shaped rather than triangle. So when you're coming along, you make that same sharp turn, and then you make more of an egg shape than a triangle. Complete that little oval at the bottom and move on. The other shape I want to show you is more of a cartoony shape, and this is actually the shape that is in the Grinch Who Stole Christmas cartoon, so I find it really nostalgic in a way, and it's based more on a teardrop shape. So we have that same base, the sharp turn to establish that oval at the bottom, and then we go up into a teardrop. Make a little point, come back down, and complete that oval. If you really want to get super Seussian with this, you could also add a little curly Q at the top to make that just that extra level of awesome. The final variation is just a twist that will work with any of the bulb shapes that we've gone over. And it's just adding a little element or a flame to the center of the bulb. So let's add this to one of our circle lights. We have the same motion. Sharp turn, big circle, and then as soon as we have brought our circle back around and are touching our oval kind of in the middle, then we want to pause here and make our flame. I'm going to make a little S shape and then wiggle back down to where I started, and then I can finish that oval and move along. And that's all there is to it. Just an S up and an S down and move along. It does add a little bit of time to each individual light, so you can choose whether or not this look really makes the free motion quilting for you. The variations might be my favorite part of this design. First, we're going to do the kind of classic 80s shape where you make that same sharp turn that we've been working with, but instead of making a circle, you make this nice little egg shape. And having it kind of broad at the bottom and coming to a soft point at the top was really key to me getting this design to look exactly how I wanted it to. You can also add the little flame or element inside of this design by coming around and finishing that egg shape and then doing a little wiggle up and a wiggle down before you complete that bottom oval. I didn't stitch it here, but you can of course also add this little element to the circle lights, and it would get a very similar look to this, but with those nice round lights that we did in the initial version. Our next variation is the Seussian pointy light shape, and if you have done a lot of free motion quilting, then this shape will feel familiar to you because it is a leaf shape, and that is one that comes up in a lot of different designs since flowers are a very popular motif to work on. It is stitched out the same way as the other lights. You make that sharp turn to begin the bottom, and then you go up and make the leaf shape and come to a point before finishing that bottom socket. As with the other designs, you can also add the element to the inside of this. If you do, I would recommend stitching these pointy shapes fairly large because they do feel a little bit more crowded than the egg shape, since they do come to a more narrow point at the top. So this is about as small as I would want to stitch this design if I was adding that element. And finally, we have a variation on a variation. This has a nice little curlicue tip to it, almost like a little tip of blown glass. And it is stitched very similarly to the last design, except when you get to the top, you continue into a little hook shape. You can stitch this empty, as I showed here a couple times, or you can add that element as well. This is definitely the most whimsical of the light designs that I showed you today, so it would be perfect for your quilt if that is your style. Now, I have quilted all of these with contrasting thread, red thread on white fabric. This is 40 weight thread, and you also saw me quilting with 30 weight thread. But in both cases, I used red fabric on the back. And this is a finer thread. I have So Fine 50 weight in the bobbin, so that's what's showing up on this red. And I do have some poke throughs of my batting that I need to go through and deal with. But when you have this tone-on-tone color, the matching thread, this design really becomes a fantastic texture. It's just a little bit different than meander, and I think it gives a little bit of holiday fun to your holiday quilts. So if you want to draw along and grab this downloadable PDF cheat sheet, then it is available for free on my website. The link is in the description of the video below. And if you want more free motion quilting ideas, then there is a playlist popping up on the screen right now with many more. And you may have noticed my new addition to my sewing room here. I bought a sit-down long arm so that it would be so much easier for me to film more free motion quilting. So look for even more of these videos in the future. And with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week and happy quilting.